You turn a handle. Water comes out. You drink it. You do not test it. You do not boil it. You do not think about it. That single unremarkable act puts you in a minority. Not a minority of people alive today. A minority of everyone. Of every human being who has ever lived. For almost all of history, the most dangerous thing in your day was a drink of water. Not the hunt. Not the war. Not the winter. Water killed more people than all of them combined. And here is the part that makes it strange. Nobody knew. For thousands of years, humans had no idea what was killing them. The thing doing the damage was invisible. There was no way to see it, no way to test for it, no theory that explained it. A cup of clear water and a cup of lethal water look identical. So people were solving a problem they could not perceive, and they did solve it. Repeatedly. By accident. Beer, tea, wine, boiling, wells placed uphill, practices that worked for reasons nobody could explain. Then cities arrived, and every one of those solutions broke at once. What followed was the deadliest period in the history of drinking water, and it ended, more or less, with one man drawing a map, in 2 weeks, on a single street in London. This is the story of how humans beat something they could not see, and how close we came to not beating it at all. Start with the simple question. What is actually in bad water? Not poison. That is the intuitive answer, and it is wrong. The danger is biological, and it is alive. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, microscopic organisms in enormous numbers, and almost all of them arrive by the same route. Human waste getting into drinking water. That is the whole mechanism. That is nearly the entire story, which sounds obvious now and was not obvious at all, because contaminated water does not look contaminated. It can be perfectly clear. It can taste completely normal. One of the deadliest is cholera. The bacterium is called Vibrio cholerae. It attaches to the lining of the small intestine, and it does something brutally efficient. It releases a toxin that forces the body to expel water, enormous quantities of it, faster than anyone can drink. A healthy adult can go from fine to dead in under a day, not from the infection itself, from dehydration. The body is drained until the blood thickens and the organs stop. Then there is typhoid fever. Salmonella typhi, slower, and in some ways worse. Weeks of fever, and a real chance the intestine perforates. And some survivors never clear it. They carry it for life without ever being ill again, shedding it into everything they touch. Then dysentery, which is not one disease, but several. For most of history, it simply appears in records as the bloody flux. It killed more soldiers in most wars than the fighting did. And then the parasites, which are their own category of unpleasant. Worms with life cycles that pass through water and back into people. Not always fatal, but permanently draining. A population carrying a heavy parasite load is a tired population. Now put all of that together in one small village. There is a stream. Everyone drinks from it. Everyone also washes in it, and upstream someone keeps animals. One person gets sick, and the stream distributes it to everyone. Children take the worst of it every time. For most of history, a very large share of children died before growing up. Diarrheal disease was one of the main reasons. This was not a rare disaster. It was the background condition of life, and through all of it, nobody knew what they were fighting, which raises the real question. How did anyone survive at all? The answer is that people found solutions without understanding them. Start with the one everybody has heard of, beer, and immediately, a correction, because this one is usually told wrong. You have probably heard that medieval Europeans drank beer because water was poison. That is an exaggeration, and it does not survive contact with the evidence. People drank water constantly. They had opinions about which springs were good. Water was free. Beer was not. But beer had genuine advantages, and one of them was accidental. Brewing involves boiling the mixture. That step exists to extract sugars, not to kill anything. But it kills everything in the water regardless. Then fermentation adds alcohol and drops the acidity. A hostile environment for most of what makes people ill. So beer was reliably safe, and nobody knew why. The same accident happened in Asia with tea. Tea requires water at or near boiling, not for safety, for flavor. The leaf demands it, and boiling water is the single most effective thing you can do to it. A rolling boil kills essentially every waterborne pathogen that matters. Tea culture is, among other things, an accidental public health program, one that ran for centuries before anyone understood the mechanism. Wine did something similar around the Mediterranean, often diluted with water, which sounds like it defeats the purpose. But alcohol and acidity still make life difficult for bacteria, not sterile. Better than nothing. And better than nothing save lives. Then there is the least glamorous solution of all. Placement. Roman engineers ran aqueducts from mountain springs, not local rivers. Not because they understood microbes. They did not, because spring water tasted better and stayed clearer. Taste turned out to be a rough proxy for something real. Communities everywhere developed the same rule. Take water upstream of the settlement. Put waste downstream. Never explained. Simply passed on and followed. And you can see the same logic in food. Fermentation appears independently across almost every human culture. Sour, salty, acidic, alcoholic. All of it hostile to spoilage organisms. Humans were running microbiology for thousands of years without the word. But notice what all of these solutions have in common. They work at small scale. A village, a household, a town. They depend on distance, on there being an upstream at all, on waste having somewhere to go that isn't where you drink. Every one of these fixes assumes space. And in the 18th and 19th centuries, the space disappeared because people started stacking themselves into cities. A city breaks the arithmetic completely. 1,000 people produce waste that the ground can absorb. 1 million people do not. London grew faster than any city ever had. Hundreds of thousands became millions inside a lifetime, and it had no system built for that. Waste went into cesspits underneath houses. Cesspits leaked into the ground, and the ground held the wells. Then came a well-meaning improvement that made everything worse. Flush toilets became widespread and popular. More water flowing through, faster, into pits never built for volume. They overflowed. So the city connected them to the drains, and the drains ran to the Thames. The same Thames the city drew drinking water from. A closed loop had been built by accident. Waste out, water in, from the same river. In 1858, the summer was unusually hot. The river dropped, the sewage concentrated, and the smell became unbearable. It became known as the Great Stink. Parliament sits directly on the riverbank. They soaked the curtains in chemicals and considered relocating. And here is the crucial detail about what everyone believed. The dominant theory of disease was miasma, the idea that illness came from foul air, from bad smells. This was not a fringe belief. It was the medical consensus, held by the best-trained physicians in the world. And it is a reasonable theory if you look at the evidence loosely. Poor districts smelled terrible and had high death rates. The correlation is right there. The causation is wrong. Both were caused by the same thing, and it was not the air. But miasma theory led to a genuinely useful conclusion. Get rid of the smell, which meant getting waste out of the streets. Right actions, entirely wrong reasoning. And in one specific case, the wrong reasoning was lethal. Because if disease travels through air, water is not the suspect. Clear water is fine. Odorless water is fine. A well that smells of nothing is a good well. So during outbreaks, people kept drinking from the pumps. Cholera arrived in Britain in the 1830s. It returned again and again over the following decades. Tens of thousands died across those epidemics, and nobody could explain why it moved the way it did. Then, in 1854, cholera broke out in Soho, in a small district around Broad Street. It was ferociously fast. Hundreds died within days. A local physician named Jon Snow did not believe in miasma. He suspected the disease was being swallowed, not breathed, and he did something almost nobody was doing at the time. He went out and collected data himself. He walked the streets and recorded where every death had occurred. Then he marked each one on a map of the neighborhood, and a shape appeared. The deaths clustered tightly around one particular water pump, the pump on Broad Street. Distance from that pump predicted your chance of dying. But the strongest evidence was in the exceptions. A nearby workhouse held hundreds of people and had very few deaths. It had its own well and did not use the pump. A brewery on the same street had almost no cases among its workers. The workers drank beer produced on site, and there was a death far outside the district entirely. A widow who had moved away from Broad Street. She had liked the taste of that water so much she had it delivered. She drank it, and she died, miles from the outbreak. That single case did more than the whole map. The water traveled. The disease traveled with it. The air did not. Snow took his evidence to the local authorities. They were unconvinced by the theory, but agreed to act. The handle was removed from the Broad Street pump. The outbreak was already declining when it happened. The removal did not single-handedly stop it, and Snow knew that. What mattered was the method, not the moment. He had shown a disease could be traced to a physical source. By mapping it. By counting. By checking the exceptions. The medical establishment took decades to fully accept him. Snow died 4 years later, still largely disregarded. What followed was one of the largest construction projects of the century. London built a sewer network of enormous scale. Other cities followed. Then filtration. Then chlorination. Within a few generations, cholera vanished from those cities entirely. not cured, not treated, plumbed out of existence. And this is the part that gets left out of the story. The single greatest advance in human survival was not a medicine. It was a pipe going the right way. So think about what is underneath you right now. A system separating two kinds of water that must never meet. Built and maintained by people you will never see. Running continuously and noticed only when it fails. Every generation before yours negotiated with water, brewed it, boiled it, fermented it, carried it, or gambled on it. You turn a handle instead. And that handle is one of the shortest, strangest privileges in human history.